Hey everybody, I wanted to make a quick video on how I fertilize my tomatoes. In the past, I'd always use store-bought fertilizer, something along the lines of this. And while they've been great, I don't really know how well they've worked. I've never done any tests where I had two plants where one I fertilized with it and one without, but there's enough videos on YouTube that show the difference. It's obvious it works, but the problem is that I don't know what works best. Each one of these have a different ratio of the NPK. This one is 769. I figure a balance is probably the best, but I've seen others that are heavy on one side or heavy on the other side. And honestly, I don't really know what is the best way of doing it. But I did come across a video of a tomato farmer in Missouri who had incredible yields using a fertilizer that's used heavily in hydroponics. And that is called Masterblend. Unfortunately, there are not a lot of videos of people using Masterblend in regular dirt tomato gardening. 99% of the time it is used with hydroponics, and it's a very complicated setup, bunch of microdosing, expensive setup, and I don't have that kind of money or that kind of time or energy to set something like that up for my tomato garden. So I have been testing. Honestly, it's a lot of trial and error, but I think I found something that works, and I wanted to share it with everybody else in case somebody else wanted to also use Masterblend and they were running the same problem where they couldn't find any good information on using it with normal dirt. So what you need for it, when you buy it, I'll put a link in the description. You can find it on Amazon. It's a little expensive, but honestly, it really isn't that much because it'll last at least a season or two, and I have about 42. Actually, I only have 40 now because I had to pull some out tomato plants, and I will easily get through the whole season and maybe use about half at most. But on Amazon, I'll have the links in there. You'll find a bunch, but make sure you get one that has the 3 bags you see on the left-hand side. Masterblend by itself is probably not good on its own. So what you want to do is supplement it with calcium nitrate and Epsom salt, and a lot of the ones come with all 3 together. The ratios you do is a 2:1:2 ratio of these, and they are a little finicky in how you mix it. You have to do it right, otherwise it will not work well, and that's what I wanted to cover here, as well as show you how much I actually dose as well too, because that's actually what I struggle with the most, is how much fertilizer and how often. And I don't know if mine is the most scientific way, but it's worked for mine. I have 7-foot tall tomato plants in the beginning of April. I have a ton of fruit, so I'm gonna assume that what I've done is a decent way of doing it. Your results may vary. I am in Arizona, and so my climate is very different. It is in raised beds with very, very good soil. So again, results may vary, but for me, it works pretty well. To mix it, you need everything you see here in front of you. You need the combination of Masterblend, you need the Epsom salt, you need the calcium nitrate. Get a good scale. You don't have to have one. This goes into the hundreds of grams. Plastic spoons, some kind of small cups, and then I actually use this to actually dose. So 1 cup of this is how much I give every single plant every time I feed. I also use a stirring stick, and then I use 2 5-gallon Home Depot buckets. So to begin, what I like to do is to first separate and weigh the 3 different chemicals. I hate to use the word chemical, but the components of the fertilizer. And for this, it actually tells you on the bag itself too. I don't know if you can read this, but right there is a 5-gallon recipe. I will paste this into the description as well too, and maybe even overlay it on the screen while I'm doing this. But I follow that exactly, and it seems to work pretty well. So, first things first, I want to zero that out. I'm gonna do 12 grams of the Masterblend. There is a bit of a blue tint to it. Apparently that's a dye they use just to separate or just to give it color. I've seen ones that don't have the blue in it, some that are bright blue, but it's really just coloring, and it's nothing with the actual chemical or the makeup of the fertilizer itself. So for this, I'm going to need 12 grams. Well, I almost hit it on the money right there. 12 grams is about a tablespoon, give or take. Actually, it says, yeah, 2 teaspoons is about 12 grams, but I weigh it. I get pretty accurate on it, but it's not a big deal if it's a little over or a little under. There, I'm a tad over. There we go. Then I'll put that aside. And once again, zero it out. And now I'm going to do the Epsom salt. So when you mix these, you have to mix them in the exact order. And I don't know the exact details, but it has to do with if you don't mix it, the different minerals get suspended in the liquid, or it doesn't properly blend. So I just follow the instructions and it works well. It doesn't take that much time to do it. So with the Epsom salt, we're going to do 6 grams. Oops, forgot to zero it. Which is about 1 teaspoon. You know, again, I'm slightly over on this one. Normally I'll be a little more precise, but I found that it doesn't really matter if it's a 1/10 of a gram or 100th of a gram over or under. And last but not least, I'm going to do the calcium citrate. The calcium citrate is like little beads, it looks like. I've seen it powdered as well too, but I don't know if you can see it in this. They're just little white beads. They take the longest to dissolve, but even then it only takes, you know, a minute max to do it. But for this one, I'm going to do 12 grams as well. That should be good. Okay, so now I have my 3. Make sure I separate them so I don't get confused with what's what. Although they all look different. The Epsom salt is more crystalline like salt. The calcium nitrate is more like little beads. And the Masterblend is the more powdered, and it has a bluish tint to it with some brown spots as well too. And you're actually going to mix it in this order. 1, 2, 3. So for mixing, I like to use 2 5-gallon Home Depot buckets. Allows me to mix the different ingredients independently and then combine them afterwards. I also, by using 5-gallon bucket, I know exactly what 5 gallons is. I mean, is it exactly 5 gallons? Probably not, but close enough. And again, this isn't a perfect science, but as long as it's close, it should be fine. I've had no problems with results, no scarring, no burning or anything with what I've done, so it works for me. So what you do first is you start with the actual Masterblend, which is this. I'm going to put the 12 grams in one bucket, and then I'm going to add the water. You'll see videos or other people talk about balancing the pH. I haven't done that. I don't really have the means to it. I guess I could, but I don't have the energy, I guess, to do that as well too. It's been fine for me. I just use regular tap water for it, but you can find some reading online. I can probably post a link to on making sure that the pH is neutralized. I forgot the exact number, but I think it was high 6s, low 7s, I think. By adding the ingredient first and water afterwards, it really dissolves it, so I don't have to do any stirring after the fact. And I'll probably fill it about 1/3 of the way up. Okay, that should be mostly mixed at this point. I have this little bamboo piece that I use, and I'll stir it just to be on the safe side. Then you want to make sure that it's absolutely completely mixed. You're not seeing any more crystals or of the Masterblend in there. I know it's hard to see on camera, but it actually stands out pretty well with the orange because everything is kind of white or bluish, so it pops pretty well. And yeah, this is actually already mixed. Let me just let it stop. Yep, don't see anything in there at all. So just in case though, a little extra. And once that's completely dissolved, we are going to add the Epsom salt. So remember, this is 6 grams of Epsom salt, and I did 12 grams of Masterblend. Add that. And the salt dissolves pretty quickly. This is just regular Epsom salt, the kind you can find that you put in baths and kind you can find at Walgreens or CVS. Just normal Epsom salt, nothing special about it. Stir it. While this is mixing, I'm going to start the calcium nitrate as well too. Get this spinning. And then put the calcium nitrate into the second bucket. And I'm going to fill this one up about halfway as well. This is actually, the calcium nitrate is the slowest to dissolve. It's still not that hard, but it definitely takes longer than the other two ingredients. So it'll fill up about a third of the way. I'll mix a little bit, and then I'm going to combine the two. Okay. And do a quick spin. So I mainly use this on my tomatoes, but it works really well on peppers. There's actually a bunch of videos of people using it for exclusively for their pepper garden. I also use it on the cucumbers, not as often though, because usually it's just enough, the 5 gallon, to cover the tomatoes and probably the peppers. But sometimes I will give a little bit less, and then the leftovers I'll give to my cucumbers and squash and zucchini. Okay, so it looks like not quite dissolved yet, almost. One more go around should be enough. Check on the other one. And this one is dissolved. Perfect. And what I do is I just pour them together, and then I just start switching buckets. It's a really good way of mixing it. It's easy. I have to stir it. I'll do this about 5 to 10 times, depending how, I don't know, honestly, it just depends how I feel. But honestly, it's probably a mix by now at this point. But I want to be, better be safe than sorry. So I will do it probably a lot more than I really need to do it. You'll notice I don't actually have 5 gallons of water yet. I want to mix all this first, and then I'm going to add the rest of the water at the end for a final mixing. Okay, that should probably be good after this one. Okay. And now I'm going to add the rest of the water, just to top it off at 5 gallons. What I try to do is actually just have the water create a whirlpool in there, so it's kind of mixing it while it's filling at the same time. Okay. And I'll usually just do 1 or 2 more bucket transfers. Then I'll take my stick and I'll just do one little, it's probably overkill, honestly. I'm sure as long as it's mixed. But, you know, why not? Okay, there you go. And, you know, fair amount of work, but not too bad. It takes about 5 minutes to do it. And if you're doing it once, twice a week, it's really not that bad in the scheme of things. Obviously, it's not as easier as just the granules that you just put in there and forget, but I've had really good luck with this. So now the part that I struggle with, which is dosing. How much? You know, it's not scientific. I really just use a solo cup filled about 3/4 of the way, and I give each plant straight at the root, honestly right at the stalk, just 1 cup at a time. So I fill the cup about that much, and then I just pour it directly on the root. And that's really it. I do have a couple double plants where I have 2 separate plants growing from the same kind of root ball area. For that, I will give them more typically, like 1.5 instead of 1. But for all the single stalk ones, such as this one, I just do 1 cup right at the base. Once I'm all done with that, I'm usually wait about an hour or so, and then I'll come back around and do a deep watering for every single plant. I don't know if that's necessary, but my logic in my head is that I wanted to give the roots a chance to absorb as much of it as possible, and then I will add the water to deep water it and hopefully spread the fertilizer that hasn't been soaked in to the rest of the roots, preferably deeper down ones. This fertilizer is really good for fruiting because of the ratio, especially the 38. That's really meant for fruiting. The first number, the nitrogen, is really for giving greenery and height. But at this point, I'm past that. I have 6 foot tall, in some cases almost 8 foot tall tomatoes. And while they'll still grow, I really want to focus now on fruiting. My season here in Arizona is really short. In about a month and a half time, it's gonna be too hot for tomatoes. So at this point, I want to really focus, now that I have height, on getting the fruit out. And you can see, I have fruit everywhere. Every tomato plant has at least 20, give or take. And I'd say most of these popped in the last couple weeks. You can see there, down there. Everything's got a little bit of fruit on it. This one's actually one of my favorite right here. I think it's a Juliet hybrid. But look how many tomatoes are on that. It's probably 30 or so. Kind of weird shape, football shaped ones. Some tomatoes in there, the big boy. I don't have too many gigantic tomatoes. In Arizona, they don't grow too well. So most of them are medium, kind of slicer type, or a lot of cherry tomatoes. Because cherry tomatoes do very well in Arizona, and they will fruit well past when other tomatoes have stopped. You can see a red guy in there. Tons of tomatillos. And then of course, the big boys right here. I'll be picking these probably the next couple days. There's some in there. What is that guy? San Marzano. Oh, I've heard so many good things about this one, and I've never actually grown it till this year. Some red guys down there, if you can see them. But yeah, there we go. So hopefully that's helpful. I know I struggled for a while in trying to figure out how often and how much to fertilize with, especially how often. So to sum it up, it is basically 5 gallons at a time. This covers about 40 to 50 tomato plants. I do it twice a week, every basically third or fourth day. And I do a solo cup, just a regular blue or red solo cup full with every single feeding. And I pour it straight onto the main part of the root ball. It's probably good to spread it out a little bit, but I'm not giving it that much. So I want to make sure that every drop of it goes to the roots. So I focus on the center of the stalk / root ball.